Hello, I'm Thunderclaww here with the Diablo subreddit, and we're here interviewing.
Hi, I'm Travis Day, game designer for Diablo 3.
Awesome, and so we've got Reaper of Souls coming up really soon, and
Really?
yeah, I mean,
Awesome.
I don't know. You want to tell us the release date
When it's ready.
when it's ready? All right. Well, we're ready for it. So we've got a couple questions from the community that are really excited for Reaper of Souls, but they've also got some specifics that they
Okay.
want answered. So you demoed bounties at uh, BlizzCon, where you go to different acts. You have specific places to clear, different monsters to kill. Wouldn't these bounties discourage group play?
No, not at all. They're very much meant to encourage just freedom, giving the players the choice on where they want to go and how they want to play the game. They're meant to more just incentivize you, diversifying your gameplay experience. We talk a lot about how Diablo 3 turned out at launch and the things that players did, and the way that they found to sort of make the most efficient paths within the game. A lot of our effort has gone into trying to encourage randomness and diversity to be the most efficient way to play the game. Also, bounties are just one of the avenues that we're taking to introduce more end game content. Another thing that we're putting in is called Nephilim Rifts, which in previous, I believe at Gamescom, they referred to as loot runs. But really, Nephilim Rifts are just sort of meant to be the best Diablo can be in a 15-minute package. So you get a key to a rift, and you and your friends or group members, whoever you want to go with, jump into the portal, and it is a random environment with random monsters with a random boss fight at the end, and it's meant to just sort of be compartmentalized, small bite-sized packages of content.
More random is good.
Random is good.
All right. So one of the rarest things that you could encounter in Diablo 3 were the legendary crafting plans. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've played for hundreds of hours and I still haven't found one. Are you planning to address this with Loot 2.0?
Yeah, we've actually talked a lot about that recently. Some of our most recent plans are to put the legendary crafting plans, either tie them to the crafter level, so we let you just craft legendaries, assuming you have the materials for it. We've also talked about other routes to make them more attainable. The crafters are really meant to give you control over making progression towards something, right? That's kind of the whole purpose. It's monsters drop loot at random, crafters sort of help you make things. So we're looking at a lot of different ways to make that a lot more accessible to players.
Mm-hmm. So along those lines, are we going to see any major changes to crafting? Or is crafting still going to be a way to get some of the best gear?
Crafting is seeing a lot of revision. I don't think we're doing anything in the way of a major overhaul. We're more or less happy with how crafting works. It's just a matter of making sure players have access to the recipes that they find relevant. We have done some things though, like we've taken the smart drop system that we have in the game, and crafters will now just always craft smart items for players. So if you're on your barbarian and you craft a breastplate, you're going to get a strength breastplate, for example. So it's ways to make it a lot easier to use.
All right, cool. So with the removal of the auction house, where the economy and everything is
Mm-hmm.
changing a lot, are there plans to scale back some of the gold sinks, like we saw with enchanting? That those costs looked quite expensive for the run-of-the-mill player.
Um, to an extent, we definitely want there to still be things to spend gold on without the auction house existing. Generally, though, when we talk about gold sinks, we want it to be things that players sort of want to opt into. With enchanting specifically, the intent of the gold sink is it's not going to be a drain on the average player. It shouldn't be cost prohibitive. The way that we allow you to spend more money if you want is, I believe, that enchanting has a escalating gold cost. So you can do enchanting. You can go enchant your legendary and try to make it better. And if you've got tons of money and you don't even care, you can just keep pushing that button. But it's going to get more and more and more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Alternatively, you could just find a new legendary and enchant that one instead. So we want to give players things to spend their money on that feel good and not punitive. Like we don't want to make repair costs more expensive or anything like that.
All right, that's good to hear. So, um, so the plan is to still have gold as the main economy, because if we look at Diablo 2, there were different periods where like the Stone of Jordan was like the currency, and then they
Mm-hmm.
moved on to high runes and all that. So it's still you're, are you actively trying to keep gold as the main driver?
I don't think we're trying to keep gold as the focal point of the economy, but we do have gold, and it should feel like there's a value to it, especially because we have items that help you find more gold, and we have legendaries that help you find more gold, like gold skin, in addition to item affixes. So we want there to be things within the game that you feel you can spend your gold on, and you're happy to spend your gold on. So we're constantly pursuing avenues like that.
Mm-hmm. All right, gonna shift over a little bit,
Okay.
and so now, again, with the removal of the auction house, it seems that there are less and less barriers to global play. So we know the PTR, Public Test Realms, where we got to test out some of the patches. Players from all over the world were on the same server, and a lot of people got to encounter people from different areas. So like people from the U.S. got to play with people in the European servers, and that was really cool because people got to finally meet other players that they've been talking to on forums and all that. Are there any plans for such a movement to like global play instead of?
I really couldn't answer that. I'm not aware that we have any plans in that regard, but at the same time, that's not my area of expertise.
Okay, yeah, understandable. Okay, so back to items. There's some stats that and currently in Diablo 3 that are just not worthwhile at all,
Okay.
such as thorns.
Okay.
Is that planned to be changed
We
for
we talk
Reaper
about that a
Assaults?
lot. Did you come to the panel that we
Yeah,
just
yeah.
did? Okay, cool. So you heard some of the things we're doing. It's definitely something we've talked about. Anytime we have a stat that someone says, "Why does this stat exist?" We definitely go, "It's a good question. Why does it exist? Can we make it better? Do we not want it in the game at all? Should we get rid of it?" We don't want to have items on stats that players feel are pointless at all. We always say it's okay that you might not want a stat as long as somebody wants a stat. A good example of that would be what we did with pickup radius, where it's kind of like, it's nice for most people, but man, witch doctors really want pickup radius. Thorns in particular, though, it's definitely something that in Reaper of Souls, thorns will scale off your primary stat. So if you have a lot of strength and you're a barbarian, thorns will do that much more damage. The Crusader also has a lot of things that really key into his thorns damage. We've made some legendary items and some legendary sets that I think one of the legendary sets that I made recently was anytime your thorns triggers, it explodes for AE damage instead of single target. So we really want to play up those affixes that people maybe haven't been super happy with in the past.
How about? Can I ask you more specifics about like hit on bleed?
You can ask whatever you want.
All right. So what about
I
bleed?
just might not answer it.
All right.
Bleeds suck.
Bleeds
I'm just
suck.
kidding. No, actually, bleeds definitely. Actually, that's a pretty true answer. I've said that myself. Like, man, these are bad. One of the things we're doing for bleeds specifically is the primary problem with them is they do a static value, like bleeds for 1,000, which might be good at some point, but then when you're hitting for 20,000, you're like, man, that thing's awful. I think the most recent change or discussion we've had with bleed is that current plan is to take bleeds and move them over to a percent damage. I'm sorry, percent weapon damage. So bleeds instead in Reaper of Souls would say deals 25% weapon damage over X number of seconds. So it never really falls off. It's always still there. It's like, oh yeah, that's a pretty relevant portion of damage, whatever random range you happen to roll.
That's good to hear. So Paragon 2.0.
Yeah.
So that's planned to come out, and you'll be able to spend points into different stats. So a lot of people are concerned with main stats in particular.
Okay.
So if I'm a barbarian, I clearly want strength. I
Yeah.
clearly want vitality.
Probably.
Is there any reason for me at all to put points into intelligence or dexterity?
Not presently. Um, it's something that we've talked about. It's something I wanted to address going into Reaper of Souls. However, it fell kind of low on my priority list. Focusing on making the items themselves more compelling is more important. Um, you can assign if for some reason you want to put points into, say, dexterity to increase your dodge chance. Maybe you've got a crazy idea you want to try out, or maybe we have item that triggers when you dodge stuff. So there's no really direct reason to want to, but you have the freedom to. It's a matter of just giving the player as much control as we possibly can.
Okay. So one of the big things in Diablo 2 was all the different types of socketable items that you could put into. So you had jewels, you had
Yeah.
runes, you had gems. Are there any plans to include stuff other than gems?
We actually experimented with some things in the early stages of development for Reaper of Souls. I personally was trying to get jewels back into the
Yeah,
game.
jewels are cool.
We tried them out. The large feedback was that they didn't feel very good because they were so random, and I've got to compare them to gems, and I can't do that without unsocketing them. So now we need to like make all this text so I can compare the gem and the jewel for my character. And at the end of the day, they just didn't feel as good as we wanted them to. Which, to be fair, even in D2, I didn't really like jewels,
Mm-hmm.
but I had the same feedback of like, man, we really have to make sockets better because they're just kind of there. Like your weapon socket, and your helm socket are huge deals, and then the rest of your slots not so much. We took a different approach instead. We just said, hey, what if we add some more gems? Like, let's try adding diamonds, and diamonds can do things that are compelling to everyone. And let's just try to add more things to that pool, um, so that we present players with something that they already understand, and it adds depth to the sockets. And I'm sure going forward, we'll continue trying to make them more interesting.
Mm-hmm. So when I was playing Reaper of Souls down on the area, I noticed that whenever you socketed an item with a gem,
Mm-hmm.
the item became bind on account, and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of players actually are getting a little worried with so many different avenues to get items bound on account that they
Mm-hmm.
won't be able to trade as much.
So the account binding stuff is something we're definitely moving forward with. More or less, what we're looking at is we're removing the auction house, and we're really trying to focus the game on playing the game instead of playing the auction house. We want players to still have the ability to trade with each other. We want there to be some sense of economy, but we really want to make sure that the best things in the game you have to earn. So the way that we're going about that right now is that legendary and set items will be account bound. You can still trade them with people in a limited context. If you find an item in a game with someone, you can just freely trade it to them for a window of time.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to make the best way to help your friends, say, give them items or help them gear up or earn items for yourself, to be playing together. So if I want to give you an item on your witch doctor, well, I'll come play with you. And then if I find witch doctor stuff, I can just give it to you.
So,
And if you find barb stuff, you can just give it to me.
mm-hmm. So it's like bind on game, and then after that it becomes bind on account.
Sort of. It's if you played World of Warcraft, it's similar to the way the raid items work there, where when an item drops, there's a window of time. It's currently, I believe, 2 hours, where which who knows if that'll stay 2 hours, but for now it's 2 hours. Where as long as you give it to someone within that time frame, you can just freely exchange that item.
Mm-hmm. All right. All right. So we've got one final question. So a lot, as you know, there's tons of different ranges of Diablo players. Some will play only for a couple hours. Some will play for hundreds of hours.
I played for 500 on just my barbarian.
Awesome. So this is for like the really hardcore people that have gotten to the end, that have killed all the monsters that they possibly could have, that have geared up. They have like 5 Paragon 100s. How do you plan to keep the game difficult at the end game tiers? Because some of these players, they have the best gear that you could possibly get, and even in like MP10, it's impossible, like, to almost die unless you just walk away.
Sure.
Is there still ways to balance for the end of the end for the best of the best?
There absolutely are ways to balance for the guy with the most obscene gear in the game. At present, we're actually revising a lot of our difficulty systems, so there's not a definitive answer I can give you right now because a lot of that's still being worked out. As of this past week, we were still talking about how we're going to change difficulty. It's definitely our desire, though, to provide content to the players across the entire spectrum. We've talked about potentially reintroducing things like Uber Diablo in the future, or finding really difficult content bits. We really like when there's hard things to fight. We have a lot of our designers who think it's great for the game. The important distinction is it needs to be optional content, not path blocking content, the way it was when Inferno originally shipped.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to find ways to introduce the difficulty, but we want to make sure it's something that people can strive to beat, not something they have to beat day one.
All right, cool. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
So this was Travis Day here with Diablo subreddit. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.